Hi, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio, and today we're going to talk about finishing up this beautiful block, Diamond Star, from the Barnstar Sampler book. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how to take this and turn it into a large quilt without doing the pattern in the book. So stick around, we'll be right back and get started. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi, and welcome back. Today we're talking about Diamond Star, and this is from the book Barnstar Samplers, in case you missed the first few videos on this. Now there's a lot of little pieces in here, as you can tell. But as I discussed in the last video, it came together super easy. All of these pieces have a definite place to go, and it's created in little subsets that are put together to make 8-inch blocks. And there are 9 8-inch blocks here. There's only 3 kind, so it makes it really easy to do some repetitive sewing. So when you get those 8-inch blocks done, you just assemble them into this very large 24-inch block. Now, the way that this block is used in the Barnstar Sampler is it is one of 3 large blocks in this sampler. And this is jam-packed full of different size blocks. There's the 24-inch blocks, there's the 16-inch blocks, there's 8-inch blocks, and there's little tiny 4-inch blocks. Now personally, this kind of eclectic, or I like to refer to it really as kind of a jumbled style, where everything is put in there and it's put together like a little puzzle so that everything fits in, is very busy. And that's not really my style. I'm really more of a, what would you call it, symmetrical. First of all, I like that. I don't like things that are super busy. I like a little bit of white space between the designs so that I can really appreciate that design and then have a little rest to the eye and then move on to a new design. So I don't think I'm going to do this. Let me tell you what I've done in the last week to kind of catch you up to date. This is together. It's been pressed. It probably could be pressed one more time before we start assembling things. But I've been thinking about how I want to proceed with making this larger. And I don't think I want to go for a cuddle size quilt or a sofa quilt or a lap quilt. I think I want a full size bed quilt, and not full as in double bed, but in big size. Probably something that would fit on a full or queen size bed with a little bit of drop on the sides. Now, the tricky part is, how do you do that? Because this pattern, the way it's designed, makes a 80 by 100 inch quilt, which is not big enough for a queen size bed. Even for, I think even for the top, it probably would just be just big enough to sit on the top of it, but it's going to have no drop. And no drop means you can't sleep under it. It's decorative only. And I want to be able to have something that I can use, appreciate the warmth of it, and appreciate the beauty of it. So I've been thinking about how to do that. And I probably spent several hours going through all of the options that I had. My first thought was to, and I'm going to turn this camera on so you can see a little bit. Okay, we're running. My first thought was to have a very large block and then put the 16-inch blocks around it, just having a little 4-inch border. And I could do that because 16 and 16 is 32, so that would fit. That would mean there would be 2 blocks underneath this, one in the corner, and then that would repeat all the way around. But by doing that, it's not going to give me that large of a quilt. It's certainly not going to be big enough for a bed. So then my second thought process was, how about if we had the big block and then we circled around the big block with the 8-inch block. So that would be this size here. And that was interesting, but that only gave me 56 inches. Again, not big enough, because you want borders in it, but you don't want it to be all borders. Usually you need that design to kind of carry through the whole thing. So then I said, what if we do the little blocks and then we put another border, excuse me, and we put the 16-inch blocks around it. Well, then you get into really big territory and a lot of blocks. There were, to do it that way, I think I wrote it down somewhere, there were going to be 24 8-inch blocks and, oh gosh, 20 of the larger 16-inch blocks, which is a lot, and still it wasn't going to be that big. We were still going to have, little borders between the groupings, and then to make it big enough, it was going to be a huge border on the sides. So I'm thinking again, what are my other choices? Well, what I finally settled on, where did it go here? And there's a lot of drawings and math and all that kind of stuff, a visual look at how it's going to go together. So what I have decided to go with is the big 24 block in the center. It's going to have a 12-inch border around it. So just roughly talking, let's see, that's going to be, this is an 11 or 11.5-inch sheet of paper. It's going to be that big around it. Now we can choose to go into that 12-inch border and maybe put a solid stripe in. That might be really pretty. Or we could just leave it all white. We'll decide that later. But then around that big square and the big border, we're going to put the 16-inch blocks. And I calculated that it would take 16 of the big blocks, and what I can do, I went through all of the 16-inch blocks. There are 6 of them in this book. I picked the 3 that I liked the best. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 4 of each of those 3 blocks. That will allow me some repetition. It will allow me to work on more than one block at a time and be able to proceed through it faster than making 16 individual blocks. So by making 4 each of the 3 blocks I like, that will take care of the middle sections of each of the sides. And then the only thing I have left are the corners. Now I'm going to leave my decision process for those corners open for now, because I've thought of a few things. These are 8-inch blocks, so this section right here is a 16-inch block. I could put one of these sections in each corner, and it would allow me to repeat the center block with the aqua fabric on the corners of the very corners of this, with this on the outside corner. So that's a great repeat of what's in the center on the outside. So I'm going to leave that for now. Also, my thought process is this. Most of these pieces in this block are small pieces. And as we start working through the fabric and we get to the end of any project, you're going to have less fabric to work with. So you might want to think about blocks with smaller pieces, and that certainly would be the case here. Now the white fabric, if we need more of the white fabric, I know exactly what kind that is and we can get that. And the only thing I would caution is some, if you find that the whites don't exactly match, have a plan for that. So you would not want to just randomly intersperse the new fabric into it. You might want to make the 4 corner blocks with the new white fabric. You might want to make all of the blocks with the white fabric. You might want to make the borders with the new white fabric. Just planning ahead. And this is kind of a little bit of an overlap with our series Designing a Quilt, to let you know what that process is in deciding how you modify a pattern or a block or a design to meet your needs. So I think we have a plan, and it's going to be this, and I'm going to just put that there so you can get a good look at it. And then here as well, you can see the center block, the outer blocks, and then we're going to have some borders. And I'll tell you my kind of far out thinking, and this is something that I think about all the time when I'm making a quilt for a bed. This particular quilt is going to end up square. So when you try to put a square quilt on a bed, it never works out well. And I find that trying to make a quilt big enough that you can tuck pillows into is also problematic. So kind of what I'm thinking is, when I lay this on the bed, I'm going to want this square right in the center of the flat bed part. I don't want it up so it's halfway under the pillows. I want it right in the middle. So what I may do is take this quilt and at the head of the bed, put another strip of fabric. And I don't know how big, but I'm thinking if I did this, it's probably going to be in the 16-inch range. And just have it blank white fabric, or have the, if it's got a colored border or whatever, have that come around. And then on the back side of the quilt, a great little trick might be to take either the 4-inch blocks or the 8-inch blocks and run a strip along the top, so that then when you put that quilt on the bed, you could fold back the top, and that beautiful border of the little blocks would show peeking out from under your pillows. That's just a thought. We might get there, we might not, but I'm just kind of thinking through the end game while I'm still playing, so I know what I might need to accommodate for. Now today I don't have any sewing for you. I want to tell you what I'm working on here. When we purchased the fabric for this project, my intention was to do this block and that's it, and then just finish it up and have it here as a wall decoration for the studio. But in working through it, it really turned out much more attractive than I thought it would. I had my doubts about the blue and the green and the polka dots and the navy and all that, but I am really, really liking it. So I really didn't purchase a lot of fabric. And we could go back to that first video and track down exactly what I had. Now for this fabric, I bought all that they had. So there's no more of this to be had unless I happen to go to another store and find it. But I think I got 3 yards, something in that neighborhood. So I've got a pretty good bit of that. And you can tell just from the weight of it that there's a good bit there. The other fabrics, not so much, maybe half a yard at max. So I went back, this came from Hobby Lobby, and I was able to go back to Hobby Lobby yesterday to see what I needed. Now I think this navy, the solid navy, is a Kona, so I'm not concerned about that one. I should be able to get that, if not from Hobby Lobby, from some other store that carries Kona. But the other three fabrics I was a little concerned about. So I went back to the same store yesterday, and it's been, what, 3-4 weeks? And I really was doubting that I was going to be able to find it. And I found the polka dot really quickly, and I was able to get, I think I got 1.5 yards of this. I found the green fairly quickly, and I don't know, let me see. I got 1.5 yards of something. I think that's this one. I got almost 2 yards of one and 2 yards of another. So I got the green. I think that's the one that's 2 yards. And then this one, I had a hard time finding it, and I went up and down the aisles a couple of times. I walked away and went to another department, and I came back because I think sometimes you're fabric blind. You look at it and your eye kind of zones into something you think it is, and you spend all of your energy concentrating on, is that it? Is that not it? And you're looking at your samples to see if it's the same, and you lose sight of some of the other stuff. So walking away and coming back, I found that in a couple of cases to be really helpful, and I found exactly the same fabric. So I was very, very fortunate to find these three, and I've got an extra at least 1.5 yards of each of them to add to what I have. So I think I'm going to do fine. And if we, by some chance, run through all this fabric, we could always consider doing borders out of the navy, or even attempting to find another fabric that we might could do stripes and borders and binding out of. And as long as it's something similar, we should be good with that. Now, really quickly, I want to show you the 3 squares that I'm going to be using first up. The first one is the Farmer's Star block, and this one has this nice little ring of aqua fabric on it. So I am going to be using that. And then I'm using Northern Star. I think it's back this way. Northern Star, and this has the green and the aqua in it, and it's going to be very attractive too. And then the tulip block. Now in the book, the tulip block shows it with pinks and plum fabrics, and we're going to swap that up, and we're going to use the teal fabric or the aqua fabric instead of the yellow. We're going to use the plain navy instead of the pink here. We're going to use the green fabric instead of the plum, so that'll kind of look like the leaves of the tulip. The multicolor polka dot instead of this little pink floral. And then the solid, we're using the solid navy for this. Excuse me, we're going to use the navy polka dot as the centerpiece, and then the white will be the background. So today I am working on the farmer's block, and I have started cutting pieces. Now remember, there were some of the navy pieces that I cut in error the first time, so I'm trying to use the pre-cut pieces first if I can, either in their size as they are or recutting them down, so we don't waste that. So that's what I'm working on. Sorry I don't have any sewing, but this pre-planning and trying to go back for fabrics really took up more time this week than I thought it would, and I only got this far. So next week when we come in, we're going to sew together the farmer's block, and we may get a little further. It just kind of depends on how this week goes. Last week was kind of rough, and it was hard to spend a whole lot of time here in the sewing studio, but maybe this week will be better. If you have any questions or comments on this project, please, I welcome all your comments, and we will do what we can to answer or address those. and I hope to hear from you. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe, and we will see you next week here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. See you then. Bye.